I think in 10 years from now,
the thing that's going to be written about Seattle,
the thing that's going to be written about Seattle
is not what tear gas bomb went off on what street corner.
It's not what tear gas bomb went off on what street corner.
But that the WTO in 1999
But that the WTO in 1999
was the birth
was the birth
of a global citizens movement
of a global citizens movement
for a democratic global economy.
for a democratic global economy.
In this new global economy, we lose our desire, our power, and our vision. In any part of the world, there are men and women who choose the path of least resistance, who accept lives of fear and isolation. But we will respond to death with life. We will respond to the nightmare with the dream. We will fight and imagine and create. And we will resist.
In my view, corporate rule is dictatorship, and the denial of shaping your economy is an end of democracy.
That's right. Ain't no power like the power of the people.
This group, nothing gets thrown at us. We are not in danger. We have no intentions of making any move on you.
We're all committed to nonviolence here, so we just want to make sure
So
we
am I.
demonstrate that to you. So we'll...
I haven't hurt anybody in 30 years. I don't plan to start now.
Cops! Our cops! Who's cops? Our cops! Who's cops? Our cops! Who's cops? Our cops! Who's cops? Our cops! No power like the power of the people, cause the power of the people don't stop. Say what? Ain't no power like the power of the people, cause the power of the people don't stop. Say what? Ain't no power like the power of the people, cause the power of the people don't stop. Say what? Ain't no power. This is a moment today because we see the oppressed people of the South and the oppressed people of the North now together here saying down with US imperialism.
That we had entered the darkest night and that corporations were threatening to further erode our sovereignty and make it impossible for our children to experience true freedom, we rise up and we say no. Separation is a device used against you to tell you who you should and should not work with, fraternize with, be friends with. You have a choice. You have a choice to be a union, to be one voice, to be the people. We are the anti-WTO. Yes. People before profit.
People before profit.
People before profit and before all things life. 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 Life.
When all the trees are gone, what you gonna breathe? Your money? When all the water's polluted, what you gonna drink? Your money? When all your food is made of plastic, what you gonna eat? Your money?
You've got people here from all over. You got labor, you got environmentalists, you got teachers, you've got children, you've got coalitions between people of color and you know, mainstream white Americans. You got middle class, you got working poor, you got poor. You got everybody out here because this hurts people. This is bad for people. It's bad for our jobs here. It's bad for the people over there.
It's about their future being traded off by corporations who frankly don't give a shit what happens to them. That's what it's about. That's what people are fed up with it. They understand it.
Ladies and gentlemen, a little bit of information. We are successfully blocking out delegates.
We are making available for you to leave now. There are protesters at the end of 6th Avenue on each end of our block, so you'd be let out right in the middle of the protest. I recommend you stay here if you can. Yes.
The opening session is still postponed. I called and asked for an immediate update. They said to relax, put your feet up, go to your hotel room, relax, have lunch, or until the situation is safer out there.
I would stay here.
You cannot get to the Paramount. You cannot get to the Paramount.
I think the beautiful thing about it was there was no mastermind. What there was an invitation to join hands. And the joining of hands happened because everyone knew you have to hold your hands and hold each other's hands, otherwise we're not going to make a difference. Each of us is too tiny. Each of us is only addressing a tiny piece of this giant problem. Until we join hands, we're not even going to begin to address it. But if we join hands, we can totally surround it. And that physically, literally, as well as symbolically is what happened in Seattle.
We changed the landscape physically, but also mentally. Life is very restricted and boxed in. It's hard to break out and be free. So that was one of the magnificent things about being in Seattle. That day, people didn't feel helpless. That was a moment to not be helpless.
We will forcibly remove you from this intersection. I would like to not hurt anyone. However, we will clear this intersection. We will clear it with chemical and paint compliance. If you do not move, you will be the selfies. Spain.
Think about if you agree with me on what you're being told to do.
Shooting poison!
Don't do this! Stop!
You're shooting poison! You're shooting poison at people! Stop! You do that! You're shooting poison! You're spraying poison! Look into your heart!
demonstration is not a demonstration of United States. It is a demonstration of all working class people all over the world, rich country, poor country, white country, black country, all countries.
You know, it's difficult because a lot of working class in this country don't make the link that they are linked directly with people in Brazil, that they are linked directly with people in Mexico City. And what happens to those folks happens to them. Not immediately, but damn, it'll happen to them.
They have said to us in countries like mine, Barbados, if you want jobs, you have to forget trade union rights. If you want jobs,
weren't just talking about Seattle. We weren't just talking about Washington State. We weren't just talking about America.
The people united will never be defeated.
It was a world coming together in Seattle and saying, this is what we want. This is what we deserve. This is what we are going to damn demand.
We believe that all people everywhere should share in the fruits of their labor. And this is why we congratulate you, we join you, and we want to fight with you to say no to the behavior of the WTO.
While American business prospers, American workers don't. While American agribusiness prospers, American farmers don't.
It's a stealth government. It's creating a global constitution, protecting property and the interests of big investors over everything else, and especially over the needs of people and their rights.
The economies of local communities and national systems are handed over to global corporations through the coercive rules of the World Bank, IMF, and the World Trade Organization.
All the victories that we had won with the struggle of the civil rights movement, with the working class struggles, have finally been hacked away.
Joining the 50,000-person labor march. It has left the Seattle Center and is now coming southbound on 4th Avenue. If you would like to join the march, you will need to go down to 2nd Avenue, go north to Olive, and join the march at 4th and Olive. The march will not be coming down here.
Labor was content with just trying to put on a rally here at the Memorial Stadium and then march downtown and march back. But the real war, the real point of impact was downtown.
There was a line of marshals that the national leadership of the AFL had, I believe, set up. There's some effort on some elements in the labor movement to do whatever they could to keep people away from the front lines and from supporting those people who are being assaulted by the police. A huge number of rank and file trade unionists and some of the gutsier unions, they walked right through the marshals and joined us on the front lines to hold the police lines back.
You have to kind of embrace a diversity of people as well as a diversity of tactics. If you're 45 and you're working in a factory and you've got a family of 4 to feed, your tactics and thinking at this protest are going to be a little bit different than if you're, 17 or 18 or 19. Our differences are our strengths. I don't think anybody wants to live in like a homogenous culture. think it would probably be of benefit, because we have such a diversity of tactics, to have a little bit more dialogue between, say, the people prepared to do civil disobedience, which means they're locked down in a certain position or what have you. They're very vulnerable to force by the authorities. So you can't put them in danger by choosing a tactic that's going to bring down the wrath of the state on people who sort of put themselves in a high-risk situation. So for that reason, there needs to be a little bit more awareness of who might be doing what. Not that a statement didn't have, need to be made.
Penny, it is so sad to see all the destruction.
To me, it was a perfect example as to why we need to fight, because this city got up in arms about them breaking Starbucks window. You know what I mean? They didn't go out and hurt somebody.
For us to have to close our stores during the peak season, the holiday Christmas season just beginning, really is an injustice.
Everyone, because of the property, downtown Christmas shopping was up in arms, and to me that exemplifies we're fighting against capitalism. And they'll go to any lengths to protect capitalism.
Display of unruliness and a very difficult day for police.
And I think our officers are exercising remarkable restraint.
It was the actions of the protesters, the demonstrators, that led them to take the actions they did.
There is not one corner of this downtown area that has not fell victim to this destruction.
Protesters vowed to bring anarchy to downtown Seattle for another day.
But the National Guard will be...
We understood why we were out there, and we understood what was going on. So when you went home and looked at TV, you know that what was being portrayed there was not what really happened if you were out there on the street.
We have not used tear gas, and we will not be using tear gas.
Labor leaders make the decision to steer their march out of downtown, try to keep their parade non-violent.
They characterized the labor march as the peaceful march, and then everybody else got lumped in with the violence or the other stuff they were so up in arms about.
Extremely tense situation in downtown Seattle.
Violent protesters, threatening demonstrations.
And the way they characterize youth really hurts. When they saw black youth in the streets during WTO, they called them gang members. So I felt that they just played a role in just reinforcing all of the isms that already exist.
The leftover protesters were even fighting among themselves.
No one here blames labor or environmentalists or even Seattle.
Protesters turn on one another. Our coming together is where our power is, and so it makes sense that they would focus on our differences and divisions.
The mayor urging protesters not to repeat this tomorrow, but no one quite sure what could happen with the WTO and protesters still in town.
While corporations build empires across borders, we are fenced in. We are taught to fear each other, and isolation leaves us powerless. Corporate power can only build its global networks by dividing us. In the new global marketplace, we are cut off from each other and from what we might ourselves become.
We shut down the World Trade Organization yesterday. We're going to keep it shut down to the best of our
And we're not going to be intimidated by rubber bullets, by wooden bullets, by tear gas, by martial law.
There was so much fear coming out of Tuesday. I mean, we had been shot at, we had been gassed, people had been beaten and shot. You know, people didn't expect that going into Tuesday, and people had to recommit themselves and reaffirm their position.
That night, we ended up meeting up on the corner of Broadway and John and decided about what we were going to do the next day. The next day, we'd meet up at 6:30 at Denny Park, and then we'd try to take back the city. We started to weave our way through the roadblocks that they had set up, and I looked around, I could see people were afraid, and at that point I said, you know, that's really not fear in your gut or in your throat, that's really your first taste of freedom. People were coming out of nowhere. I mean, it was like a scene from that Michael Jackson video Thriller. People were like coming out of manholes, people were coming out of cars. So we went from like 50 people to like 100 people to like 150 people to like 300 people, and the numbers just kept growing. I don't know where all these people came from. And I think the cops were totally surprised by that.
And we're calling on everybody from Seattle. These are your streets. This is your town. Care about your kids' future. We want you to join us today in the streets of Seattle.
People had come off of Tuesday night, and it was pretty rebellious, and people were unclear about why the suddenly, you know, very negative and aggressive response by the police and that sort of thing. And so, like, you know, Wednesday was the defining day from Tuesday night about how people were going to respond.
We are ready. We are ready. Let's give the steelworkers a good name this time around.
Protesting has gone very well. The police cooperated with us. They informed us what was happening and gave us the opportunity to get our people out. And we got our people out and our signs. And so the media was pretty fair at explaining that it was clearly not an AFL-CIO protest. People's power, the people's power, getting stronger by the hour, getting stronger by the hour.
There's a fear by a lot of union officials about just the word direct action. It makes it sound too militant.
Unfortunately, big labor these days has a big fat history of really writing itself right out of people's movements.
We had some unions that absolutely wanted to be in the street and wanted to be as aggressive as anybody. And then we had others that thought that it was absolutely ridiculous that we were out there.
There was an intentional focus to split the coalition. It wasn't just labor doing it on itself. The police pressure, the news, everything wanted to do that.
Power to the people. Power to the people. All right, you're beautiful.
Mask and goggles.
The whole world is watching. 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 I am not struggling. I am peaceful. Remove that need. The whole world is watching. The whole world is watching. The whole world is watching.
Police were stopping buses and going on and searching, identifying people they thought were demonstrators and pulling them off. They were searching people on the way downtown. If they found anything that they thought might be a demonstrator, leaflets, which is supposed to be freedom of speech in this country, people were arrested. When we were trying to walk down, they stopped us, arrested 30 people in the street. They followed us around Seattle. Now they've corralled us into the square. We're just here. It's supposed to be, this is actually supposed to be one of the designated demonstration areas for this whole WTO thing. We're supposed to have that right. It's guaranteed in the Constitution again. The mayor does not have the right to supersede the Constitution, but that's been done here today. I think at that point, all of the national media, international media were probably showing things, and the city just wanted to get rid of us. We were put on buses and taken to Sandpoint.
We can't win this fight alone. If we're going to be successful in taking on the power brokers, the multinational corporations, right, and all that money, the only way that you can take on global capitalism is with a global movement of people.
While there was this coherence that we are about the same issues, but we are not about identical issues. Yeah, the rubric is the same, the umbrella is the same, but within each of our movements we can shape and articulate our freedom while just being fully aware of other people.
And that we all have things in common. It doesn't mean that we're always going to agree on everything, but we cannot allow those little things that we don't agree on to get in the way of the ultimate goal. And the goal is to take back democracy on this planet.
So I'd like to introduce to you David Taylor from Direct Action Network, the people who helped with us shut down the WTO in the streets of Seattle. Well, I'd like to say that all of us in Direct Action Network that are still out of jail came down today to support you guys. And show them what coalitions are. When labor and student and environmentalists and human rights activists stand together, we can and did shut down the WTO. Coalition strong, and we want to show the WTO that if we stand together in solidarity, we cannot be stopped.
I know if you got a credit card, you're welcome as hell downtown, but if you want to bring your First Amendment rights with you, you're on your way to the pokey. than that civil disobedience. Now was it Cesar Chavez? Maybe it was Dorothy Day. Some will say Dr. King and Gandhi set them on their way. No matter who your mentors are, it's pretty plain to see. If you've been to jail for justice, you're in good company. Have you been to jail for justice? I won't shake your hand. Oh, sitting in and lying down are ways to take a stand. Have you sung a song for freedom or marched that picket line? Have you been to jail for justice? Oh, you're a friend of mine. You law-abiding citizens, listen to my song. Laws were made by people, and people can be wrong. Once unions were against the law, but slavery was fine. Women were denied the vote, and children worked the mine. Yeah, the more you study history, the less you can deny it. A rotten law stays on the books till folks with guts defy it. I want to shake your hand. Sitting in and lying down are ways to take a stand. Have you sung a song for freedom or marched that picket line? Have you been to jail for justice? Have you been to jail for justice? Will you go to jail for justice? Then you're a friend of mine.
What I saw this morning, I stayed out there in the rain and I watched. I watched youngsters who were peacefully demonstrating, who weren't doing a damn thing to hurt anybody, who went down the streets, and I watched them jack-booted, helmeted, club-holding. You were treated shabbily. If this was my city, I would apologize to you for that happening in this city. And I want to welcome, this is where you belong, right here with the labor movement.
Then the rally ended, and then there was no march.
Come on down! Come on downtown! Come on downtown! Shut it down!
There was such a sense of disappointment at that point that we weren't actually going to challenge this no protest order. So some of us got together and organized a follow-up march. We went from the pier, climbed the Pike Street hill, climbed there up towards downtown. As we got to 2nd Avenue, there was a group of maybe 2,000 people, and they were moving from our left to our right, and it was obvious they were running from something.
Malcolm once said that the riot is the voice of the people. You know, and this wasn't a riot by any means of the word, but it was a manifestation of the people's voice. And the response by the police department was one of the most significant turning points. It told everybody that all of you are slaves, and you better get back in your...
docks, and we went through the Pike Market and came up to the corner and saw those police chasing the kids down the street. These are the same kids that have been marching with us. They weren't doing anything wrong.
People got pissed. And I had trade unionists who, just a matter of days before, were saying we shouldn't be out there, calling me up saying, when are we going to protest next? I want to be there because what's going on is wrong. And one thing that you got to say about the labor movement, you know, when our sisters and brothers think something's wrong, they will get engaged. Sometimes it takes a while to get there, right? And and we all have to connect the dots. But, you know, when they saw people that they had marched with on Tuesday, that they had developed relationships with on Tuesday, being beaten and being gassed, right?
I'm just so ashamed of my country right now. I'm crying because I got pepper gas, but I'd cry anyway. I mean,
It radicalized a lot of people to see that when push came to shove, that they were totally willing, in fact, had a blueprint for making war on their own people.
Nobody gave us any warning. They trapped us in the blocks and they doused us with tear gas. I have a 7-year-old child. I'm out here to voice my opinions on how we should protect our environment for the future. And I have the right to assemble, and my rights have been taken away today.
They have a letter from Nick Wakata, who's a councilman, saying that she is no threat to the public and that she has the right to freely walk the streets in the city of Seattle, and she is showing that to the police now, that Nick Wakata says she should be able to walk the streets.
What they're telling us is that it's okay for you to protest if you're small in numbers and weak, but once you grow into a mass movement, it's not okay to protest.
Your normal rights don't apply this week in Seattle, apparently.
Why is that?
Because we're winning.
Seattle Mayor Paul Schell was in our King 5
We
news
are joined
room.
by Ray Waldman, the director of the Seattle Host Committee for the WTO.
Police Chief Norm Stamper talked to reporters.
Mayor Paul Schell. The police department defends its methods. The Seattle Police Department. Pam McCammon joins us on the telephone right now. She is with the Seattle Police Department.
Obviously, we feel that we have handled things very well, even though some people decided to be violent. Still, we have been and done things correctly. We have not made mistakes.
How many civilians were injured?
Less than 20.
Now, a democracy such as ours is tested on a routine basis. Obviously, we are witnessing that here on the streets of Seattle as certain rights may or may not be taken away due to the situation at hand.
Certainly, in the face of intense provocation, our police officers responded very, very effectively. We too share in the anguish and the pain to see windows boarded up at dozens of businesses.
And you need to help us with that, because if they see themselves being made heroes or victims, then we are sending the wrong messages.
The cops just started running at us all of a sudden with canisters. I guess it was pepper spray, and just attacking the crowd.
How do you feel right now?
A lot better. I'm pretty calm. My eyes hurt and I can't really open them without a lot of pain.
Well, good luck, Natalie. You've got your eyes shut, you can't see anything. That's pretty much the story for people who are getting in the way down here.
What can I do?
I would stand on the side of the street, stay out of the way, ma'am. Anyone who wants to stand down here and be in the way, I guess they're inviting trouble upon themselves.
Police decided on Wednesday night to do what I personally call just hunting people. And they literally pushed them from Pike Place Market down First Avenue. They're out of the no protest zone. They're out of the curfew zone. The curfew had not even happened yet. And here's the police marching down the street, actually hunting them down.
As the police surrounded this group of protesters, and we gave refuge to them in the labor temples.
Hey, we've talked for 4 days now. Go sit down. Sit down. I'm sitting down. Tell her.
If you're media, please step to the front. If you're not, sit tight. Okay, we need you to move. So, sir, do you have credentials as media?
Independent media.
Do you have credentials? Sit down. Stand up, move around the can, and go across the street to the rest of the crowd. Stand up, walk around, across the street to the rest of the crowd.
What if we don't want to be arrested? We don't want to be arrested.
No, you're not media.
May I go this way?
No, you may not. Go.
They just arrested people. And we had people that did nothing but come out of the Labor Temple building and followed instructions that were given by the police that ended up in jail. So, and at that point we said enough is enough.
If we wanted to, we could have tore this city apart. There was 50,000 people in the streets yesterday, and a handful of people broke a handful of windows. And now they're taking the peaceful protesters that are out here and treating them really wrong. It's wrong. They should realize that if we wanted to raise hell out here, it could have happened.
From a Cold War militarization that threatened humanity with one blow, we have moved to the militarization of every aspect of life. A militarization that threatens humanity with many blows, in many places, and in many ways. National armies created to defend against foreign enemies are turning their rifles inward. Global corporate power depends on armies to protect it, jails to silence dissent, and violence to pave the way for its expansion. National repression is the necessary premise for corporate globalization. Every country, every city, every house, every person, everything is a battleground.
Without being charged, and we were being detained here without being charged, and we'd like to speak with our lawyer. We are citizens with voices, and we'd like our voices to be heard. Our constitutional rights have been suspended today.
We had decided on the buses and prior to that in our own affinity groups that, you know, if we were to get arrested, we would not give our name, we would not cooperate in any way, we would not be separated. We would all ask for and make the same demands, which were immediate release, all charges to be dropped.
We are not getting off the bus until we have a meeting with our lawyer on the bus.
It's okay, they won't take you, stay on the bus.
There were about 4 other buses that were parked beside us, so trying to figure out what to do. We were posting messages up against the wall, you know, shouting at each other, trying to pass on messages through the attorneys to figure out what was going on.
after 14 hours, they decided it was time for us to go. We were told that we'd be moved to King County, so the bus started to move, and we weren't taken to King County. We were taken out of the view of the media. We were taken around the back of Sandpoint, and then we were unloaded. The cops, the riot gear got on, pepper sprayed a few people from the front of the bus. You do something like that on the bus, it goes throughout the bus and everybody gets it. So at that point, we were forcibly taken off of the buses and taken into Sandpoint, and some of us were taken to King County.
What democracy looks like. This is what democracy looks like.
People had a strategy about how they were going to deal. They were going to stick together in jail and not let anyone be separated or isolated or intimidated or punished or threatened, and that really worked.
Our director of organizing was one of those arrested. So that's the wrong person you want to get into a jail cell with a bunch of other folks, because he's going to organize the people on the inside. So that's what happened, was that people started organizing on the inside. There was solidarity actions going on, chanting. What was going on outside to show support for them was also happening on the inside.
It was incredibly moving to hear that 6,000 people had come and sat down or locked down so we could see our attorneys.
I was told by the ILWU to deliver the message that if this wasn't resolved, that the ILWU was willing to shut down the ports in solidarity.
It was an obligation for us to be out there. We had to be there. It was our role to be there.
It created a sense of community, because that was where the steelworkers and the other unions were bringing food and blankets and water and taking care of people, and people were just taking care of people in what seemed to be the most natural way for human beings to function, but which we had never really seen before.
And then to hear also from the legal team that people in Cuba and Amsterdam and London and Africa and Mexico were rallying for our release was also quite amazing.
That first night, everyone was out there so late, and then they had that spokesperson council, and they had the people talking on the bullhorn, repeat after me, this is what is going on. But what was amazing was that we did make a plan through this whole consensus model with a couple hundred people there. I had never seen anything like that before in my life, and I think that for me that was a turning point, because I started to look at people around me differently.
I think the whole jail experience really brought a lot of people together, because at that point it became very personal.
It was a good experience to be there in jail, to recognize that, hey, no matter where these people are coming from, right, they decided that they had had enough and that they're willing to lay whatever they had at that point, which was their body down for the cause. And to be with a group of people, no matter where you were coming from, was a very powerful thing.
The other thing I have to do tonight is tell you some bad news. And I want your promise. That you will stay sitting down. Hold your neighbor's hands. Stay that way while I tell you. Stay that way afterwards. Even though you may feel upset.
Each of us came to Seattle for different reasons. Some of us out of desperation as much as out of hope. Some of us came with causes we have worked for our whole lives. Some came for reasons we cannot yet articulate. When we filled the streets of Seattle, there was a power in our bodies that we didn't know we had. In this city, for this moment, our lives were our own. Who can say at what precise location and at what exact hour and date this global movement began? In Seattle, we were only a small part of the movement, but in the gas and bullets, our memory returned. For a moment, our history was made clear to us. We felt the edges of our skin marked by a global and historical struggle. We stopped waiting for our world to be legislated or prescribed to us. This time, we did not ask for permission to be free.
We had to do more than just give lip service to this coalition building. If we're going to mount an effective response to the events of the week and really coordinate an effective rally on Friday, we had to get out there and walk the talk.
We're going to do this, right? Let's just be perfectly clear. We're going to march back into that no protest zone. The question that the mayor and the chief of police had to ask is, do they want to confront us?
WTO went against too many people at once. You know, labor, environmental movement, women's rights, animal rights, every different type of group of people as affected by this, and that's their worst mistake ever. They pissed off too many people, and now we're going to fight back, and we're going to fight back unified, and that's what's going to help us.
Sometime. What better place than here? What better time than now?
We took the streets back. We took the streets. They tried to tear gas us and they couldn't silence us. They shot us with rubber bullets, but they still couldn't silence us. They set up curfews and zones, and we broke right through them. We could not have had this victory without the solidarity that all of you have shown. Give yourselves a hand. Stop us now!
I think Seattle taught people that all these interests, not only can they live with each other, but they're necessary for each other. That no labor movement will really be strong and sustainable till it includes the environmental concern, and no environmental movement will have a relevance for the future unless it brings into the equation how do people live, how do they survive, how do they eat, how do they get water.
There was a banner, Teamsters and Turtles together at last. That was so wonderful. Of course, we belong together. The same people who exploit natural resources exploit human resources. We belong together.
This is something that's part of our prophecy, that it's time for us to unite ourselves as common people throughout the world, crossing some of these barriers that have been created by corporations to keep us apart.
Yeah, we got to have solidarity around these things, but solidarity doesn't mean that we don't talk about the issues that separate us. And that's the biggest change that I see happening. Not for us to buy into the whole kumbaya, let's sit around a fucking campfire idea and just march down the road together. That's part of it. But you got to take it that step further. Race, class, gender, sexism, heterosexism, the whole 9 yards. If that's not in your analysis, then you're only half-stepping, and you're not really working for the revolution.
In order to make a stronger movement, we need to actually stop and say, okay, let's assess ourselves and see what we can do to get to know each other better.
Without being liberal and fake about it, figure out how to work with groups that are in struggle and who've been in struggle. And not like say, come follow us, but like, oh, we're finally awake. Gee, we're kind of late. Let's get something together here.
I will absolutely never be the same again. I've never seen this before. I've never seen people stand up like this before. And I'm going to take this home, and this is going to keep me going for a long time, because it's really opened my eyes to some amazing possibilities.
We need to then make the circle full and not rest satisfied that the streets of Seattle were fully global, because they will not be fully global till the streets of Delhi and Trivandrum and Ghana and in South Africa and in Bangkok and in Latin America, we start to have the same expressions of solidarity and the same sense and build-up that we are together in this.
Isn't this extraordinary? I've been around since the 60s and my dad in the 30s with the UAW, and this is really happening for the first time. It's great.
I never thought the time would come that a new generation of activists would part the waters. The waters in which your idealism is supposed to be drowned. And come to the surface. Smiling. Fighting. Laughing. Dancing. Marching. Committing civil disobedience. Renewing American democracy. Concretely. Expressing. Solidarity. Not only here in the United States. But in the far corners of the earth. Beyond the eye of the media. So you have slowed the machinery of destruction down. But it can't be about slowing the rate of destruction. It has to be about speeding the rate of creation. A new world. A better place. Thank you. I am reading this off my pager.
information.
This is direct information.
A complete collapse.
A complete collapse.
There will be no new millennium round.
There will be no new millennium round.
I was asked to make an announcement from the Indy Media Center. The Filipino representative stated that our presence here empowered third world representatives to help the WTO come down.
Not only will there be attempts from the Pat Buchanans, there will be an attempt from the Democrats and from the Republicans to ensure that the anti-globalization movement ends up looking like and being a xenophobic movement in its most obvious articulation. And I think we have to ensure that that does not happen, because the anti-globalization movement is about a universal shared humanity.
We scared the shit out of them in Seattle. It's absolutely not, they were set back now they've had time to reflect, and they're going to try to spin it different ways. But let me tell you, Secretary General Michael Moore is talking different about global trade today than he was just 2 weeks before.
It's time that we come together. It's time to stop feeling as though we are isolated entities living lives of unsatisfactory consumption. It's that we can do it.
We have the capacity to remobilize and come together again, and that's good, because we will.